If you'd like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or get involved in the conversation on social media. Join the Pearl Jam Podcast community group on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at liveonfourlegspod.
And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Gentlemen! Mama Queen! Matt fucking Cameron in the drum. Mr. Boom Gasper. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hey everybody, now welcome to Live on Four Legs, the definitive live Pearl Jam podcast. So it's been a 2-week hiatus, and that means it's been 2 weeks since the tour ended. And for a lot of you that are listening right now, you've been probably asking, where the hell have you guys been? Well, this is why it's good to check our social media pages, because we do post updates on these things. After Raleigh, I ended up coming home. I was at a wedding that weekend. Ended up coming home and got a case of COVID, and that kind of put me out, but it was even worse than what I thought it was. What happened was that I went to urgent care to get some medication, and they didn't go over my daily medication doses, and they started prescribing me with things that did not interact very well with the medication that I take daily. So I was taking both things, and it was probably the worst experience that I ever had in my life. Really, really tough to get through that, and I was not hoping that we would have 2 weeks of this and 2 weeks off, but one of the worst illness experiences that I've ever had in my life. But now, back to 100%, back to being healthy, back to wanting to do podcasting again, and really excited to do podcasting again. So that's why we're here. This episode's a little bit different because obviously when we come back, you kind of expected, oh, well, what show are they going to cover? Well, we're not going to cover a show on this one. We are going to cover what happened 2 weeks ago, finishing up on the 2025 tour, and now what is considered to be the end of the Dark Matter tour. Boy, did that fly. Yeah, that went by pretty quickly, huh? So we're now in this holding pattern period, but we also can look back. Most of the bootlegs are out, I believe, by the time we recorded this. Everything up until Nashville has been released, so only Raleigh and Pittsburgh to go. And we can kind of look at some of these themes, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to break down what the themes were for the 2025 tour. I came up with 6 of them. We're going to look at kind of how this band treated this year and how they treated this fan base this year and what they stood up for this year. I think it's a lot of good information, and I think that it kind of all culminates into what they've done as a body of work for the last 10 to 20 years, all leads up to a moment like this. And they keep doing that. They keep bringing stuff back that's a little bit of a tribute to their history. They keep bringing back stuff like talking about their belief system and what they stand up for and what they think is right. They keep involving the fans in the shows. And even a lot of this is kind of about friends, and maybe there's a little bit of closure that happened on this tour. And we'll talk about all of that. It's not just an episode for highlights, even though there will be highlights in this. This is an episode for telling stories and figuring out what this tour meant overall. And I think you guys are going to enjoy that. So, also, outside of reaction episodes, Javi and I have not talked about our shows that we went to from Raleigh to Pittsburgh on the regular platform. So we're going to do that first, and then we're going to jump into all the themes. So let's get this one kicked off. Randy Sobel over here. Javier Hervas, Mr. Guru, is over there. And you, last time we talked, like on a podcast together, not last time we talked, you were not supposed to be going to Pittsburgh, but you ended up at night 2, didn't you?
I was not supposed to go anywhere. Let's start by that. But yeah, things ended up working out, and Aaron and Mike, which huge shout out for both of them. They were like helping out with lodging and trying to figure out the situation itself. And then somebody over Twitter responded to the need for a ticket, which I met in person. What an awesome guy. We had a great time, and Pittsburgh was one of those things where part of me goes there chasing a song that I've been wanting to listen to for so long. But at the same time, it was such a wonderful experience. It was like everything was quick, just fly in, fly out, just enjoy a little bit of the city. But like I've said so many times before, it's about the community, it's about the people that you meet, about the people that you crave to see again. And we had a very emotional night. I think we were able to see a band that finally opened up about a few things that maybe we were not expecting them to see so vocal about it. And what I'm referring to is that night was the anniversary of Chris Cornell's passing. And we had some stuff that I don't think no one in that venue expected that we were going to listen to that night, or tags that they were included, or certain comments. So it was a very special night. Very quick trip, but definitely one of my favorite memories.
Yeah, that'll all be stuff that we get into. It's a huge part of this tour. And I mentioned the word closure in the intro. I think a lot of closure moments will have to deal with that. But I mean, that's kind of what it's all about. I love, when you can go on a trip. It's been so long since I've done the fly by the seat of my pants. I'm going to go and go to a show like 3 days before it happens. I'm going to decide I want to go to that. It's been a long time since I've done something like that. So I'm a little jealous that you got to do that, because those experiences are so fun. But let me tell you, Raleigh was such a good time. I had so much fun in Raleigh. It felt like a lot of people were there. It felt like the GA, although, yeah, there were certain things that happened in GA that happened before I waited in line that I think might come off as a negative from that, even though everything got figured out. GA for Raleigh was awesome on night 2. So many good people to be around. It was just very much like you're within family there. I spent the show with Lori, and Lori, first of all, very emotional because she had been dealing with a death of a friend, a tour buddy that she had gone to see a bunch of shows with in the past. Passed away about 2 weeks before that show happened. And we were in GA, and there were a couple songs where I know I look back to her and she was working through stuff, and I was just like there, shoulder to cry on, like, you got this, you can get through this. But it wasn't even that, like, it wasn't even the song. She had a moment with Ed where Ed points her out. She's wearing a sequined Cubs hat and a Cubs, I believe it was a City Connect Wrigleyville jersey. And he points her out because one way to get Ed's attention at a show is to wear Cubs gear. I think she kind of knew. She's like, I don't want to force anything, but he sees me, then that'll be cool. And he sees the sequin hat. He points it out, says, I like your hat, and then has a tambourine in his hand and goes to throw her a tambourine. Now, the story goes is that the girl in front of her stole it away from her at first, and then she was able to get another one of her own. But like that, to me, I'll always remember that show as being Lori's show. but it's also in a way like kind of my show. Yeah. So, look, I think a lot of you who I know personally kind of know a little bit of my family situation and know that I've had some difficulty with my brother in the last calendar year or so, where we were not on speaking terms for a little bit, and then we kind of are, and it goes on and off, and it's a difficult thing to deal with. But unbeknownst to me, he showed up at that show. He showed up. He texts me first song in and says, "Hey, guess where I am?" And I text him from 2 rows deep and say, "Hey, guess where I am?" And he didn't put two and two together that I would be there when I had already told him that we were going to be in North Carolina that week. So, somebody was being forgetful, but like just kind of surreal that midway through the show, not even midway through the beginning of the show, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm like, holy fuck, what is he doing here? And he went with a friend, and he came on the reaction episode afterwards and talked on the reaction episode, and only that, but like I think, one of the weird things is that I sometimes I feel like my family thinks I'm like playing house almost with this podcast, where it's like, oh, cute, he has a little thing he does, and they don't realize how serious people take it. They don't realize how serious I take it. They don't realize the reach that we get. And to see him, to know that he was there for the reaction episode, which ended up being an incredible reaction episode because everybody had some kind of emotional story to tell. Getting him to see that to me was like, okay, if you haven't figured it out yet, now you have. Like, this is what we do here, and this is legit shit. I kind of briefly said, I'm like, what'd you think of all this? He's like, yeah, you're doing something. And he was with a friend of his who was a ESPN producer and executive producer for a very long time. And even he was like, you really got some content that you're putting together. So it was a reaffirmation for me to be like, okay, and my brother's very opinionated about those kind of things because we both come from the same background. And for him to see it all go down and get a glimpse of it was pretty important. It was almost more important than the show, even though the show was pretty damn cool. That was a good show. But yeah, I mean, think about that. That's just nuts. It's just nuts that something like that would happen, right?
It goes to a different dimension. I just being part of this too and listening to that, it's pretty cool. And when somebody tells you that you have something going on that you admire and respect, or you feel that their opinion might be heavier than what you expected, I think has a lot of meaning. But I don't have a brother because I'm a single child. But I just cannot imagine like how you felt about the entire situation, like just being there and being able to wrap up a show that you enjoy so much, that it had so much meaning to you in that kind of situation too. It has to be very heavy.
Yeah, I think it was. My take on the whole entire show was just like, it wasn't an I don't believe what I just saw, like, holy crap, we got the show of the century. It was just, what are they doing? They're doing Setting Sun to Open. They're doing B Girl. They did like Untitled with the Caroline on My Mind. Like, it just felt like so many things. Like, this was a show that I would usually miss, that I would look at and be like, wow, those are some cool things that I would like to have seen. And in the past, I would miss it. I would miss a show like that. And in this case, I got to see the show that I usually miss, because in normal cases, I would have said no to Raleigh and I would have went straight to Pittsburgh, but I couldn't do that this time. So I think it was just a mixture of everything involved. It was like a lot of things kind of going in and out and be like, okay, what am I seeing? And then I'm so close to everything. I'm making eye contact with the band, and I'm having an experience up close, which, I'll never be the camp out GA guy, but I'm going to want to be in GA for the majority of what I go through here. So I was very thankful that I had 2 of the 3 shows that I went to this time around were in GA. But I mean, it was just kind of everything put together. Just was a wild ride. And I can't believe that was 2 weeks ago.
I know it
Almost
feels
feels like
longer.
forever. Yeah, almost feels like forever ago. But
Yeah, it feels longer than that.
we'll get into these themes in a couple minutes here, but one of the things that I want to bring up about this tour that basically everybody agreed upon was that it had an acceleration to it, where you started off pretty good in Florida, then you built off of something in Atlanta, then you built off something more in Nashville, and it felt like you kept building off the last shows. And it did feel almost in a way, and there could be discrepancies. I think that I still think that Nashville night 1 and 2 are probably the ones to beat, even though Pittsburgh night 1 is spectacular in its own right. I think that they upped their game after every show. They went back and they said, how can we top what we just did? What can we do to make you forget about the night before? And I think they did it. And that's not something that you can say about tours past. It's usually kind of mixed in a little bit, where once you get into like the 3rd or 4th show, 5th show of the tour, you're like, okay, well, we're kind of going through the motions a little bit. Here's some songs that have been played, and maybe there's some songs still on the table, but like energy and set list wise, it felt like they kept building off of their last moment. And I feel like everybody's been saying that.
It is hard to describe. In one of the conversations that we had before we started, it was just more about how can you be objective in this run. I think there's many things that we can agree upon, but it's so hard to discriminate. Like, okay, yeah, you got really good shows in Florida for the hardcore fans. Maybe, well, they didn't play a lot of deep cuts, but like you were saying, also they keep building and building and building, and then you have Nashville 1 and 2. When you have a crowd that is extremely responsive, you have a crowd that it would be very loud and will sing every song. There were some elements of the Nashville shows that remind me of South American shows because some people were singing guitar parts, which is super weird here in the United States. And then you have so many other things building up. And like you said, I guess they feel comfortable doing that, and it's the only way that they can move forward now. You have that wonderful aspect that they were going to look, okay, what we have played here, what we have not played here, and it's going to make a unique experience every night. But since this was a very short run, now you can be like, okay, what we don't have many shows left. What we can do to make it better or to surprise the fans in ways that we haven't done on this run. And I think they succeeded every single night after the fact that they started to build up that momentum going. And they ended up finishing up with a wonderful set in Pittsburgh night too.
I think a lot of that also has to deal with them having the knowledge that this would be the last of the Dark Matter tour, which is insane to think about because really it lasted a full calendar year because it went from May of 2024 to May of 2025. Like we didn't even get a secondary run outside of what we just got. There usually in some cases be a September or an October run, and I think a lot of us were hoping for that, but they seem
Mm-hmm.
pretty definitive on we're not gonna be touring for a little while. And they deserve that. They've earned that. They have been touring pretty well since COVID and coming back from COVID shows. And a lot of people can say, well, they don't tour as much as this person. And that's not fair to make comparisons to other people, especially if you're like, this person's older than them and they tour like this. And it's not fair because it's based off of what they want to do. So they've had I think, 100 shows since COVID, which is a lot, which is a lot. And maybe it's more than 100, but I'm estimating it to be around like 100 to 115 or so. And they deserve the break, but it's also like it just feels so quick that they would almost abandon this idea that, if they come back, let's say they decide to come back next year in the fall or the summer. We're not going to know. It's not going to be a dark matter tour anymore. So we're not going to know what their ideas are, what approach they're going to take. So to them, they have to be thinking like, all right, this is the last impression we have with this. And then we don't have any plans for the future. So we need to give the fans that lasting impression of leave it all out there and do something memorable. And that's exactly what they did. Every single night, there's something that you could say was a memorable moment. I felt like you could take one thing out of every show.
I agree. There's very unique moments every single night that we can point out. It does feel short, right? Like you feel like you had 1 year for this run. But what I wanted to add too is like we see the year. And what I mean with that is just we see the live aspect of a band that is performing in front of us for a calendar year. But Dark Matter Run goes far beyond that. The pre-production, the recording, the signing, the art. It's a longer process. So I think that we're ready to move on. Now, I really hope that we can see them next year. That will be ideal, right? Like, because it felt like this was a very definitive point where the band was going to stop. There's no plans. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. And I'm intrigued to see what's going to be the next setting for the stage, because this is a band also that it has history, that it have recycled a few ideas from previous tours when it comes to stages, when it comes to sound. But maybe they're just going to take a complete different approach, or maybe they feel that they can utilize certain elements. Are the screens going to be a thing? Are the visualizers are going to be a thing? Everything is unknown from this point on, which it makes it exciting, but I really hope that we don't have that gap where we're not going to see him around for a long time, or maybe we're not going to listen to new music for a long time, because right now we are in the golden years, and I think we should enjoy them as much as we can if they want to do that.
All right. As promised in this episode, we're going to get to 6 themes of the 2025 tour. 6 things that are kind of definitive to how they approach a show, how they see what the crowd wants, how they're feeling about certain songs on a certain night, and what kind of stories they're going to tell to certain crowds. Like I'm looking at this list here, and none of these themes should be surprising to anybody, because this is the full rundown of what a Pearl Jam show is. You have these kind of moments that can bring you back to your youth, or can give you strength in the moment when you've matured and you've grown within this band. There's so much that they've developed on that stage that has just been staple tour after tour after tour. And again, none of these themes are going to feel new, fresh, but the reason why these themes are going to be talked about will feel fresh, will feel new, will feel re-energized. So let's start with theme number 1 here. And that is reacquainting themselves with their history. It's been said before that some people don't think that Pearl Jam necessarily pays tribute to their history enough, where it's an album release anniversary, they should play that album, or they should play stuff from that. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. It just kind of depends on where the wind is blowing with them. Sometimes It's like, yeah, let's celebrate 25 years of Yield and put out new merch and put out videos that have been uncovered and giveaway and things like that. And then other times it's like, no, we're not going to touch it this time. We're not going to pay that tribute. We're not going to play the same songs that you heard at the venue 25 years ago on that date. It's a mixed bag, but the nods to their history on this tour, I think, are pretty important here. And I kind of pulled out three of them that are very good examples. And one, my first one, I think is going to be the one that you can talk about the most. It's reuniting with Jeff's bass on Small Town in Hollywood. Like paying homage to that history, like knowing that that was a piece of their history that had been lost. And Jeff, when he had that bass strapped in, looked so happy to be reunited with it, that it was a piece of his past that he hadn't seen for 30 years, that he was connected with, that he recorded some songs with, and it's back in his rotation now. For the Seminole tribe to have kept it after all those years and have brought it to them for that was an incredible story. I don't think, and maybe because it was on night 2 of this whole entire tour, I don't think people are still talking about that as much as they should be, and they should be.
Right. And it's such a cool story. You love when you have those moments where you have that musician that it reconnects with something that have been connected with in the past. In this case, we have this bass, specifically, it's a 1961 jazz bass made by Fender that it was used to record a few songs and verses. And the story goes that Jeff rented this bass from Norman's Rare Guitars in California, and then they kind of forgot about it, and then they kind of like packed it with no meaning or no intention to keep the bass, but they just stored it, and they ended up paying like a bunch of money just like in late rental fees. And then when Norman, which is the owner of Norman Rare Guitars, he got the bass back, he just sold it to one of the Hard Rocks in Orlando specifically. And then the connection with Chris Osceola from the Seminole tribe starts, and he knew that this was a bass that Jeff used around that time, and he specifically kept it for him, and he got it as a gift before this run started. And it was a bass that, it was one of those things where like, we're not going to keep it away, we're just going to put it in rotation right away. And he ended up using the bass for the whole run. And it's funny how that works, because it's just, as a player, I think he went back to those years, and as a player forces him to play in a different way, and maybe something that he was missing, or maybe something that he was just craving, that something maybe that is a piece of wood, like something material, was going to inspire him to recover a few details in the way that he used to play, or enhance his playing as it is as of now, which is an outstanding player.
We were invited very, very special group of people invited us, and it was an honor to accept the invitation. And we trusted it would be a great thing, but it's been better than we could have imagined. And can you agree that this has been a great, great room to share music and share connection? Well, we owe that connection and this connection, and we feel a connection now, to our good friend Chris, to everybody, the Seminole tribe of Florida. We are so honored to be invited by you personally. And you said some very, very kind words to us last night, and to hear those words from you, it will last a very, very, very long time. And another side story, just as something you might understand. Jeff Ament, there was a bass that he played on the second record of ours, which was called Versus. And he went to I think he rented it to play it, and then when we were done making the record, he wasn't able to buy it. They had already sold it or something, and it was something that's stuck in his head all these years, 33 years, and our good friend out there, Chris, he says, you know, I think we have that fucking thing. Because they own all of it, you see. And they are caretakers and custodians, and they are also grew up knowing and fighting for justice. And so this was an injustice they felt they could repair. So Jeff showed up at the show last night, and a bass guitar that's been in the clutches of the Hard Rock Cafe for 30 plus years was sitting in the dressing room waiting for Jeff, and that's it right there. What an act of generosity. That's Mr. Chris right there. Thank you, Chris. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. I seem to recognize your face. That bass, haunting, familiar, yeah. I can't seem to place it. Can I find a candle of dawn to light your one name? Oh, lifetimes they're catching on with me. All these changes stay.
Yeah, that was such a fun moment because you don't get that. Like, you know, they do a pretty good job of archiving a lot of their stuff, and we know what the warehouse looks like and all that. To like actually see it develop and actually see it happen and actually hear the story of it, like that's not something that, you know, we're out looking for in the mystery machine. That's like, oh well, where's Jeff's bass from this? Like, we're not looking. It was just kind of a great nod to bringing back their past. And there were a couple other moments on this tour where it was about paying tribute to the moments that kind of made them. And one of the other ones that I'm thinking of right now is in Atlanta, where they did bring up Atlanta 94 a couple of times with Dissident, and Dissident was a good one to bring that up with because the songs ended up being on the Dissident single. But Better Man, to me, was the fascinating one because he told the story about how they recorded that for Versus and they weren't happy with it and they didn't feel like they had the right vibe with it. But when they recorded the Atlanta show in 94, they took and isolated Mike's solo track and used that for the version that ended up on Vitalogy. That's a story that's been told before. That's not a unique story to that show or anything like that. But for Ed to talk about it on stage, I think is more important because he's acknowledging all of it. It's not just lore anymore. You know what I mean? It's coming straight from the source. So, you know, getting that, and then even like a little thing at Jazz Fest, getting Tremor Christ at Jazz Fest because we wrote this song in New Orleans. Getting stuff like that makes you feel like, especially if you're a local to New Orleans or Atlanta, it makes you feel that Pearl Jam has an attachment to these places. That their past has a unique connection to some places down south where they have a little history, and bringing it back up and making it part of the show, I think is meaningful. It's meaningful to do that.
Just the fact that you take the time to dig into that and do the work to make those little connections that maybe not too many people know about this, and maybe the casual fans, they're not very connected with the history of the song related with the city. It's just, it says so much about the pre-work that they do before that they hit the stage. And it's great. I'm just very excited to see more of this, to see how many more stories we're going to discover that maybe we didn't know, or maybe there's so much more that we can discover related with songs that they have special connections with certain cities that we are not aware of yet. I'm craving that, and I really want to see a little bit of that, a little bit more too.
So, second theme coming up here, and these are in no particular order. I'm just kind of going off of like how, maybe not of importance, but just the order feels right. Let's put it that way. So, we talked a little bit about their history, and a huge part of their history in general is who they are as people and what they believe in. And one of the themes for this tour I felt was standing up for what they believe. And again, that's not an uncommon theme with them throughout the years. Obviously, it goes all the way back to 1991, 1992, writing pro-choice on his arm, and then being part of anti-war protests and all different things. And I think why I bring this one up, there was the Springsteen stuff that happened in Pittsburgh, but the one thing that really sticks out to me was the moment in Daughter where, look, it had been 9 years since what happened in Raleigh when they had to cancel that show because of the bathroom bill. And they could have gone into this show and been like, bygones are bygones. They've changed the laws. Fine, we're just here to play music. But remember, they sold a transgender flag shirt at that show. Jeff was wearing it on stage at night too, for sure. And the coordinating speech with Daughter that happens in the tag there, where Ed talks about identity and addresses as well that people might not be comfortable with other people's identities.
I'm thinking about all the people who want to choose how they would like to be identified. And if this is indeed a land of the free, you gotta know that those folks are brave. And at first they ask, would you just identify me the way I would love? And some people say yes, and some people say I don't know, and some people they are confused because they just don't know. And after they ask, politely, gently, at some point, they may need to demand, look, I will identify the way you would like to be identified. Please respect my heart. Please respect my being. Please respect my instinct. I'm trying to love myself is what they're saying. And they cannot love themselves Unless they are themselves. We have lots of freedoms. It's obvious that should be one. Thank you.
People can't love who they are until they are themselves. Like, that just rocked me. Like, that was so powerful in that moment to bring it up, to address the scenario, to situation, because it ain't going away anytime soon. I mean, more than ever now, transgendered people are being discriminated against. And they bring it up because it's part of what they believe. It's part of who they are. It's part of their human nature to care about human rights. And I will say this for this tour, there weren't a lot of situations where they talked about, like, oh, fuck Trump and stuff like that. It happened in Pittsburgh, yeah, but there weren't a lot of times, and in the past it might have been every show where they would have brought it up. But in this situation, I think keeping it to those isolated moments really felt powerful on this tour.
It is the right way to go. You don't need to be utilizing social media platforms to just explode names or stuff like that. And there was something in this tour too, in this run. I saw it in Nashville. I saw a band, especially Ed, that they were upset about something, that they wanted to make a point without a need of calling names or pointing names. The message via the songs, the message via the tags, it was so much more powerful than that. You don't need to name somebody just to make a point about how bad they're doing or like what are the things that they're going on that they're very concerning. One example, Do the Evolution, consistent line change. He's a thief, he's a liar. And there was a bunch of that going on this tour. And like you said, Randy, it would have been so easy just to say, like, well, it's been so long, we're just not going to talk about this. But it was a very well thought moment that the band decided to carry on. And I'm so glad they did. Not because certain things have been changed, the issue won't stop. It's especially now more than ever where people feel that they're under attack because they want to express who they are, which is not okay by any means.
No, it's not. It's not. And I think that is a good segue of Ed talking about having the freedoms to be able to have these discussions. And that's what happened on night 2 in Pittsburgh, where he gets into that little spiel before Rockin' in the Free World. And he's basically saying, like, if we can't talk about this, we lose what makes us complete. That's paraphrasing a little bit, but he was pissed. And a lot of it has to do with Bruce Springsteen getting the backlash on it. And look, Ed's not Bruce. Ed's not Taylor Swift. Trump's not going to tweet about Ed. He's just not. It's kind of funny when you think about it. It's kind of funny that he just would ignore him. Almost saying like, oh, well, Pearl Jam's not popular enough for me to be pissed off about.
Wrong. But anyways.
Yeah, I know. I know. He is who he is. But taking a jab at Bruce Springsteen gets him more headlines. That's how he thinks. And the subtle moment with My City of Ruins being played, to have his back through what is a very challenging time right now, and not being afraid, because a lot of people, I feel like there's a lot more people that are afraid to say anything, especially people with a platform are more afraid to say anything now than they were maybe even back in 2016 through 2020. And that's scary and that's sad. So it takes a lot of courage to say something to the crowd. It's not the same as it was. It's not 2003 where he does have the right to say it and he's not going to get in trouble for it. They're very well, it's not going to happen, but there very well could be consequences for him saying things in the future. You know what I mean? Like, that's something to be scared about.
You know, it's just, I just want to say how important it is and how we've never lost sight or forgotten for 1 second the privilege that it is to stand on a stage in front of an audience. And when a hero like Bruce Springsteen brings up issues and makes his thoughts be known, and uses his microphone to speak for those who don't have a voice sometimes, certainly not an amplified one. And I just want to point out that he brought up issues. He brought up that residents are being removed off America's streets and being deported without due process of law. That's happening. He brought up that we're abandoning our longtime allies around the globe and signing on with dictators. That is also happening. And here, driving through all the colleges, University of Pitt and Carnegie Mellon and the incredible area you've got, and thinking that they're defunding American universities that won't bow down to their ideologies, as Bruce said. Now look, I appreciate you listening, and I bring it up because the response to all that, and him using the microphone, the response had nothing to do with the issues. They didn't talk about one of those issues, didn't have a conversation about one of those issues, didn't debate any one of those issues. All that we heard were personal attacks and threats that nobody else should even try to use their microphone or use their voice in public, or they will be shut down. Now that is not allowed in this country that we call America. Am I right or am I wrong? Part of free speech is open discussion. Yes. Part of democracy is healthy public discourse. Yes. The name calling is so beneath us. Bruce has always been as pro-American with his values of freedom and liberty, and his justice has always remained intact. And I'm saying that I'm saying just to be sure that this freedom to speak will still exist in another year or two from now when we come back to this microphone. And what better place to have a positive response than the working fucking people of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
To your point with Nashville, I just want to bring this up, but there was a story that we heard about from a friend that apparently the venue did not want the band wearing anything political, and that potentially could have rubbed them the wrong way, and is why you got that angry show at night too. You remember hearing about this?
Yeah, there were some conversations going on after the fact because everything has started with the reaction episode, because I was myself even wondering like what was going on, because you can clearly tell that like Ed was very upset about something. And somebody mentioned that there was some sort of request that the Nashville venue didn't want any sort of political T-shirts on the stage. So I think that did it, and it worked very well because the band was made a point in a very musical way with a very staggering set and that sense of urgency that you want to say something, but you're going to say it through music and not necessarily stopping the show for telling stories or political statements or anything like that. But you could tell that the band was moved, and they were pissed. They were very pissed.
Well, let's stick right with Nashville with theme number 3, because this is pretty much going to be one moment and one moment only. Just paying homage to those who paved the path. And I think there's a couple of different things, actually, now that I think about it, that you can say fit this. And the other thing that we're not going to talk about as much actually happened at the same show at Nashville Night 2 is that they played Sonic Reducer with the original lyrics that were written by Dave Thomas, who had recently passed away. Like, that's paying homage to somebody that paved the road. And everybody knows that they played Sonic Reducer, and it was a little hint into why they played Sonic Reducer, but that's obviously not the thing that people are going to think about. The thing people are going to think about from this show is Peter Frampton playing Black face to face with Mike McCready. The band has this history with Peter Frampton like they do with somebody like Neil Young or Pete Townsend, or somebody along those lines who they've shared the stage with before. Peter Frampton has almost never coincided with Pearl Jam at all. I think that there was a Sirens tag at one point. It was either Sirens or Black, now that I can't remember it, but I remember the show. I believe it was Lincoln, Nebraska, where they did a tag of Baby I Love Your Ways. I believe it was Baby I Love Your Ways, now that I think it.
You are right. It was.
Yes, it was.
2014 Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay, was it Sirens or Black?
Sirens.
It was Sirens. Okay, I
Because
should
it's,
have went with my initial thought.
yeah, because it's one of my favorite versions of Sirens, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the only instant where I remember Peter Frampton even being involved with Pearl Jam at all. And maybe Ed has mentioned him at a show, but I don't know under what circumstance, anything like that. But look, they don't have a lot of guests come and join them like that anymore. It's usually, let's get the opener band to come out on Rockin' in the Free World or Bob O'Reilly and let's party. But it's very rare to see somebody who's just well acclaimed in the music industry come and join this band and not just perform on a song, but Peter Frampton was able to change the identity of Black and make it his own, which even with anybody that can come and join on that stage to play a Pearl Jam song, you don't see that. They play it Pearl Jam's way if they come out and play it. You know what I mean? They allowed him the platform to just play and be himself.
I was listening to it this morning, and it gave me the same, like, goosebumps, emotional aspect, because, like you were saying, this is a band that you're going to have guests, but you got to fit the pod. You got to fit whatever the song needs, because they're all about serving the song. Like, this is not about, like, I want to play it this way. No, it's a communal effort. And maybe this is the only exception that we're ever going to see where somebody dictates how the song is going to be. And it was a perfect fit. Like, Peter Frampton elevated Black to a whole different level. I will never forget all the emotions that I felt when you see all the players just basically gravitating towards Peter and allowing him to be the player who he is. And Black went in a complete different direction. Him soloing back and forth with Mike, and also let's just not forget about Stone and Jeff, because I know that a lot of people are going to be focused on those two, but the fact that Jeff and Stone also have to redirect their playing to allow Peter to shine, it's everything. It was such a beautiful moment, and I never saw it coming. So, for example, Randy, who will be your big two names that you will expect? I will say maybe Jason Isbell and Jack White, which they have some sort of relationship with them.
Both on tour.
Both on tour, exactly. So everybody's like, well, no, they're not going to show up. Nobody expected Peter Frampton. No one. Like, I don't think not even the best, most hopeful thought would have expected something like that. And it was the outstanding ovation at the beginning, the outstanding ovation at the end. It was just, people were absolutely entranced with him, and it was such a magical moment. I will never forget that. It's hard to beat.
It reminds me back in the days where, like, the rumors were really kind of a hot subject, where people would try to put like 2 and 9 together to be like, oh, Uncle Neil's in town because of this. So, of course, you know, Neil Young is going to come on stage, or Chris Cornell's in town, and like people trying to stir up the pot for some of these guys to join the band. And there were times where that rumor would end up being legit. A couple times, but a lot of it was complete BS. But get this, like, who's even going to have a rumor like that? You know?
Right.
Because we're not thinking about him. He's not somebody that's on the radar of Pearl Jam at all.
Exactly. He's not in the scope of the possible guests that you may have.
Right. I mean, the PJ20 guest list if anybody can remember some of the rumors, I mean, hell, I would not have been surprised if somebody said the ghost of Kurt Cobain was going to come and join the stage to play Lithium.
I
You
wa-
know?
Actually, I was gonna say something related with Kurt Cobain and PJ20, but so, something else that I wanted to add from the view that I had that night, which it was a very good spot and everything, but I couldn't see it too. And then somebody else told me like that they were in front of Jeff's side. You see an extra amp, and people were like, "What's going on? That's not part of the equipment that they use." And that's where some of the questions that started to be, okay, what is going on tonight? Because from my spot, I couldn't see it, and added to the fact of the surprise, it was so much bigger after that.
I love when there's a payoff. Nothing better.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Theme number 4. One of my favorite 80s wrestlers of all time is Rowdy Roddy Piper. At the Piper's Pit, one of the best talkers in the business, and just an absolute legend who we lost too soon. He had this quote, and he had an infamous quote that he always said: "Just when you think you have all the answers, I change the questions." And that is where we get into this moment with this theme. I mentioned it earlier. A lot of discussions that we had leading up to this tour somehow ended up back at talking about Setting Sun and wanting Setting Sun to be the official closer for the tour. Every night, just like they did on the first leg last year, people were hungry for it. You and I were hungry for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it happened. Night 1 in Hollywood. That was the closer. And that was exciting because maybe the band had heard our prayers. And it didn't come back in the closer role. It was kind of just played in the encore and spots for the other times that they played it. But when they took the stage at Raleigh Night 2, and I'm on the live stream. I was live streaming beforehand, just waiting for them to come on stage. I'm like, all right, I'll take the first couple songs here. I'm listening for something. I'm listening to see if I can hear a chord or something. It takes a little while to develop, and it takes a little while to get to my ear. But I hear something that is definitely not like an instrument being played. It's definitely like a synth sound that's coming through a speaker.
A loop.
And yeah. And my first thought, I shouted, "I think we're getting Setting Sun." Because it was the same kind of tenor. Like maybe you could have thought Indifference, but I wasn't thinking Indifference. The other option, randomly, I'm like, it could be River Cross, but Ed's not at the pump organ. So Setting Sun was such a shock as the opener for so many reasons, because we knew that as being the song that we wanted to end the night with. So we didn't have any expectations for that to be as the beginning of the show, or what it could mean if it were the beginning of the show. That wasn't even a question when we talked about it for all that time. It was always, we want this to finish our night, not start our night. So when it does, your mentality of the whole entire show has changed. And it's the only time that they started off with a slow song and didn't go into another slow song afterwards. Because think of some of the other shows where they would do Releasing of the Girl, Oceans into Present Tense, or Garden into Low Light. This was a one-off where nothing can seem to follow Setting Sun enough to justify them continuing on that pace. So they went right into Corduroy instead. That's how big that moment felt. That's how powerful that was. And there was an air of shock down in that crowd of people being like, what is happening here? Again, completely unexpected, completely out of left field. And we thought we had our answer. Like, hey, they did close with it again. It could be back. Sure, maybe in Atlanta or Nashville or wherever they had played it previously, it was not in that spot, but it's still on their minds. Nobody had any expectation for it to open up your show, to start your night, to change the questions as we thought we had the answers.
It is a wonderful quote. When you think you have all the answers, then you're going to change the questions. I mean, you can't describe it in a better way than that. I remember my reaction knowing that you were there, because it's a song that I think you know that you're going to get because it's so much supported by the visuals. It's a very unique intro that you see the screens, you see the like literary stuff going on. You're like, okay, maybe this is going to be setting sun, but the expectation of an opener, it's so intriguing because you have that song that people listening to this, you guys know that how passionate we are about this song, that it has to close every night because it's the perfect closer. How you follow up with that? You have Setting Sun as an opener, completely coming from left field. And like you said, they completely broke the pattern. They didn't follow up with something mid tempo. They didn't get experimental. No, they're like back to business. And you get Corduroy into Why Go, into Last Exit, into Small Town. They're like, it feels that it was a very unique, special chapter dedicated to that moment and that moment only. I'm going to follow up with the comment that I said before. This is why you go see them live so many times, because of this kind of moment, this kind of synchrony of songs that you never thought that you were going to get. Well, we have that. And now we can talk about that, you know?
I want to go back to what you said about the visuals. And yeah, this song has very prominent visuals, especially when it closes. But as you know, none of the opener songs have any visuals. There's never been any visuals on Release or Oceans or any of those songs. It's just a blank background.
Yes, that curtain up opening up, and then you have this sort of moon that it gives this glare to the band, and then they start to play with it. So yeah, I just don't know how you can see that coming with that kind of cue.
There wasn't much video attached to this either. It was very simplistic. I can't explain what the graphics were, but it didn't have that like ocean wave and like turning graphic and all that. It didn't have any of that. It was very simplistic. And that's a conscious decision right there. I don't know what it meant. I don't know why. It could have just been like, hey, let's change it up in a way where people will be surprised. But, this tour had some surprises to it, but I feel like this was one of the biggest ones, and there's going to be a surprise that we talk about in a second that fits into another category of themes here, but it brings me back to the indifference moment from St. Paul. Because that was a little different because that was your first song of the whole entire tour, but also that left people in shock the same way. You did not see it coming. And I think that a similar moment would probably be when they played Rearview Mirror really early in the set in Nashville. I think that's similar. That kind of gave me like a holy shit feel to it. But even so, they have done that in their past before. And that's exciting for sure. But Setting Sun never, ever, ever would you have thought would even peek its way through on the first song.
Even though that RVM is a good moment to talk about, you can't beat Setting Sun. It's way too special. There are different levels of that.
All right, let's take a break now. Let's pause for station identification and give a huge thank you to everybody that contributed to our Patreon this run. This was a fun one. I really felt like we were the most prepared that we've ever been on site. It was the least anxious that I've felt after a show in gathering people together. It seemed like it all happened naturally. So anybody that came to all the meeting spots and met up with us every night, that chatted with us, that gave their thoughts and perspective, thank you so much, because it's meaningful. Like, this is all archival footage now. We can go back and, listen to what people had to say in the moment. We're not going to get that again. That's what's unique about all of this, is that it's a one-time thing. And now that we sit here, even this episode is just coming from different perspective and coming from, having to think about it a little bit. But, these episodes were really good this year. I think we had some just amazing comments. We had some amazing stories that were told that were connected with the show. And yeah, it's just, we keep doing this for a reason, because it connects us with you guys. And obviously you guys have told us that it's why you guys want to be a part of our Patreon. So we thank you for that. And we also are going to thank some of our brand new patrons that have joined up during this time. So let's get to thanking them. Thank you to Scott McLaughlin, Ryan Hurahan. Thank you to my brother. He joined up. I'm sure it was just to hear his own voice, but he joined up.
Hey!
So thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
Eric Choing, Adam Lichenfeld, Sammy Steinlight, The Very Family, Brandon Glasheen, Jennifer Kavari, Kyle Blythen, Ernest Huff, and I think this is your friend that joined up, Aaron Stinchula.
I was gonna say, I met Erin in person in Nashville, and what a wonderful gal. She spent so many hours just making like the bracelets and helping the Taco Jam truck and connecting with Tim. So yeah, shout out to Erin. She's such a wonderful human being, and I cannot wait to see her again on tour again because she's part of our community now, and she was very excited to be part of the Patreon stuff and just listening to more episodes and all that stuff. So yeah, kudos to her.
Very cool. Thank you so much for joining, and I'm sure next tour, I'm sure I'll see you there. So yeah, Patreon, we're working on some plans right now as to what to do in the foreseeable future. And honestly, it's kind of a lot of influx with everything right now. All I'll have to say for the next month or two is just go with the flow. You know, there might be a week where we might have not have an episode because we're working on stuff behind the scenes that is a little bit something extra. We might just need a break from doing the weekly episode deal because as we've been doing this for a very long time, I feel like that while the format is still working for you guys, I feel like we need to change it up every now and again. We need to tell some different stories. We need to hear some new voices. And that's what we're going to be working on in the foreseeable future is figuring out what other stories we can tell through this band. And it might not be every week where you get a full show rundown anymore. You'll still get them for sure. But you also have to think, I've mentioned this on the show a lot. All the big shows we've covered, a lot of them, even recent stuff, we've covered a lot of those. So it's exciting to still do some of these, but also if we do a random show from 1998 that we like and we know that the bootleg people will like, we're not sure if that's going to grab everyone. So we want to continue to try and make content that's going to grab the entire community, that's going to be like an episode like this. Here are the themes from the tour this year. This is why this tour happened. Like, that's stuff that people can gravitate towards. If you get too deep into the weeds on it, you lose some people. And we want to be able to continue to keep this fresh. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do another episode next week that's covering a full show, and we'll still honor all of the Patreon requests that we've been getting. We have a couple more to get to this year and a lot of new patrons that are in for a request. So if that's you, then make sure you reach out to us from Gig Leg and Horizon Leg Tears. Make sure you reach out to us and let us know which one that you want us to cover, and we'll put it on the books. But there are going to be times where we're going to tell different stories in different ways. So hang on to that. I'm excited to see it all develop, and we got a team together now to put everything together and, you know, with new series, new ideas. So just hang on to all that. It's going to be fresh. That's what we want to do here. We want to make it fresh, and we want to get as many eyeballs on this as humanly possible. So there will still be full show coverage. There will still be Patreon episodes. We're not going to change entirely, but we want to come from different angles here. So if you want to join up and support the show on Patreon, please do so. It helps out so much, even when it's this time period where we don't know when the next time we're going to get on tour is. It's still important that we get the support during this time. So head on over to patreon.com/live on four legs, or if you have the app, then search for Live on Four Legs and join up there, or go to liveonfourlegs.com and click the Become a Patron button, and you're in. And that'll help out so much with what we do in producing content, in raising funds sometimes, and yeah, it all keeps the machine going because, again, I'll mention this is non-commercialized, and we intend to keep it that way. So you guys keep the wheels greased up and moving, and that's just how it goes. So thank you, and let's get back into the rock and talk about some more themes here. Theme number 5. This is always one that's growing. This is Obviously, when you have a connection with your audience, you're going to learn more stories as you go along. And, a lot of people have said, like, oh, well, this person gets to tell their story. Well, why can't I tell my story? And you just don't know. You just don't know. Like, they're going to choose the stories that they tell because they feel like it works within what they're doing for a show. And there's a lot of good examples where fans were honored. And there's one, I haven't dug into this one because I haven't watched this full show, but the Pittsburgh one with the kid named Andy, like that was apparently a really, really good moment. I have to dig back into that, but that was a really good moment. There are a couple of great requests that fit in here. So this theme is the fan's point of view. And again, year in, year out, almost every show now, there will be some kind of dedication or some kind of nod to a fan that might be going through something, that might have wrote in, that might have had a story that they'd recite. So I think the big one here obviously comes from Hold On, from Night One in Raleigh. And those were our friends, Rich and Dermot, who requested the song initially in Camden when they helped Ed build the set list. That episode is on our platform if you want to go look for that. That's a terrific episode that gives you a little bit of an insight to how to make the donuts and all that. And one of the requests that they had that night ended up being Hold On, a song that they've only played before this 5 times. Lucky enough to see one of those at Wrigley. And yeah, there's not a lot that go around here. So it gets played at Raleigh, and that's a massive surprise moment. I don't think anybody thought that kind of song would ever show up in a set again. But there it was. There it was.
Riding on top of
because some fans kept writing in and saying, hey, you promised this at one point. You promised this at one point. They didn't budge on it. They worked on it, and we got it. And there are a couple other great fan moments, too. I want to mention two more. There is the moment with Grievance in Pittsburgh, and we know a little bit more about that story because our friend Lori actually drove with the girl that made the request for this song, and she said that almost the whole entire drive, she was like, I need to hear Grievance, I need to hear Grievance. And yeah, of course, Ed's picking her out of the crowd to pick the song, right? Out of everybody.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great pick. Other people were like, oh, she could have picked anything. Like, well, Grievance is pretty fucking good. It hadn't been played in 9 years. So That's a good choice right there. And then the other one isn't a request, but a story that comes to mind is the story that he told before Daughter in Nashville about the girl who wanted to go to the midnight release of Verses and her parents wouldn't let her, but then found out that her dad actually went and got the CD for her. So it was a really touching story, and that girl's father had passed recently. So, him getting to tell that story, I think, is a part of it. But this is the fans' point of view. They are a fan service band, always have been. And for them to dig into Grievance on the spot like that was phenomenal. And they only fucked it up at the end. And to play a near flawless version of Hold On To is absolute gold. That's where your influence can come in. And you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to overutilize it. But when the band is all ears and they want to listen, good things can come out of it.
And okay, I know that there's a lot of people out there thinking, well, maybe you could have chosen something different. It is the right song for the right time. Like, I've had Grievance in the past. You know when was the last time that I got Grievance, Randy? 20 years ago.
Well, that's the past. That ain't recent,
Right. So just the fact that Lori told the story too, because I was part of that conversation when like I met with her and the rest of the guys from the crew for dinner before Pittsburgh 9-2. How she was so passionate and so specific about this is what I want to listen to. Grievance is the song that I want to listen to. And she had the opportunity, and you know what? Like, it was a great version for a song that it has not been played 9 years ago. I'll take that
the
for
last
sure.
one before that one.
Right.
Look, if we don't come into play, then maybe they do play the same set list every night. I don't know. But having that influence and being able to reach the band and let them know the reasons why you want to hear something and having them listen, I mean, there's no better feeling in the world. I'll never know if I got what I wanted out of a fan request. I'll never know that true story. I know that it happened, but I don't know the reason that it did with Brandon J and Philly. But if that is something that Ed saw that note and said, okay, that's on my mind for Philly, then more power to this band for holding weight with those moments. All right. Last theme here. And this theme, I think, is a little bit different than some of the other themes that you get to see every tour year. We don't get to go through this too often. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But I think, this is not just closing a chapter, but this is closure that we got from some of these moments here. I think very clearly the headliner from that is the Chris Cornell stuff that happens in Pittsburgh. Getting Comes and Goes as a tag on Wishlist will probably never happen again. That's literally Gigaton, the only appearance of a Gigaton song during this whole entire tour, which is insane. I think that's the only time that an album had been completely left off during a tour year. I think that's the only time. But to go back to that story, to honor him, which was something that they were very hesitant on doing in the past. Last year, same date, on his death anniversary, they played, I believe it was Vegas, and it was just very subtle. Matt was wearing a Cornell shirt. Nobody else really brought it up. Nobody made a big deal about it. When they played Missing, there wasn't any talk of Chris before playing those versions. It wasn't until maybe even going up to Fenway where he brought up Chris and the Tree story, that he was thinking about him, and that kind of maybe led way to the hunger strike moment that happened in Sydney. And now we've kind of come full circle with this, getting hunger strike for the first time that Pearl Jam did it in the United States since 2014 with Chris. So there's a lot of weight in the moment, and you were there. What was the feeling like in that arena, knowing that they were addressing this?
Wow. I'm just trying to stay cool with all of this because it's just remembering that it just means a lot to me because that's something that I never thought that I was going to experience. So everything has started with the wishlist tag. I remember vividly, he said, I wish that I could make you proud. I wish that we could climb more trees. And
Back to the Fenway story, yeah.
And Aaron was my ticket buddy that night, as many other shows. And I looked at him and I said, like, he's talking about Cornell right now. And we both, you look around, Randy, it's just like this sense of, it's very hard to describe, is people very quickly connected with what was going on. And you feel that is excitement of being like in a live show kind of gets away from that. And there's this sense of like silence and respect. And we are just going to listen to whatever he has to say. And the tag got even better at the end because this is the closest of what we're going to get from Come Then Goes. I'm pretty confident about this. I mean, we will never hear that song live.
I wish you could come back again. Climb more trees with your old friend. In the basement, we turn it up loud. Take more long walks under the clouds. Hear the sound of your own crowd. They want more of your own crowd. Send aside, make you send you aside.
There was such a meaningful intention behind that because he's talking about him now very vocally. He's expressing emotions and he's transmitting something with a song that has a deep connection of what was going on that night. Like wish list. I wish that you were here. I wish that I could be so many things to fulfill whatever you want to be, fulfill whatever we are going to be. And then the cherry to the pie, I remember that Mike did something with this guitar. And I look at Aaron and I said, like, he's going to play Hunger Strike. And I'm going to lose my fucking shit. That's what I said. And we went from that moment where you're remembering something in someone that it meant so much for music history to then maybe you can move away from that sadness moment that we got together as a community and or as a crowd specifically in that place to maybe now we can go into celebrating his legacy and his music, singing Hunger Strike and taking his vocals as an audience. And that was a very beautiful moment. It was one of those full circle things that you never think that you're going to get in one night, and we did. And it was not on my bingo card for sure.
How could
to
it
get,
be?
you're right, to get Hunger Strike in a random night in Pittsburgh night too.
I mean,
Uh,
it wasn't anniversary, so it wasn't random, you know.
right. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. You're right. But I don't think that is part of the equation because you're like, no, they're not going to do that. Maybe they're going to remember him in a more subtle way. But it was beautiful, man, and it was a great version. And I think we delivered. We delivered with the singing. So that makes me happy to remember and emotional at the same time. So it was a very special moment for me for sure.
I want to bring it up another moment that can feel like closure from this tour, and it was another death near anniversary. Not an anniversary of a death, but going back 9 years, one of their longtime crew members who was with them from the very, very beginning, a guy that had lived in Raleigh, was living in North Carolina, and this was like right as they started that 2016 tour. The man's name was Scully, and we've mentioned him on the show before. He's been involved in moments in Pearl Jam, and I think one time and when Ed came out and did some songs to begin a show, he played drums on. So he's been involved. He was long time crew member. And beginning of the 2016 tour, he ends up having a heart attack and he passes away. And they pay tribute to him. They pay homage to him on, I believe, the first or second night of that tour. And his hometown is Raleigh, so they didn't really get that opportunity because they had to cancel the show to do something for him in his hometown. So that was 9 years in the waiting for them to honor him and honor his family. His wife and his children were in the audience that night. And I think just as much as Cornell, even though Cornell's going to get the headlines for sure, honoring somebody like Scully that meant so much to the band, that was such a key member in putting this band together and helping them get to be who they were in the beginning stages. Finally getting to tell his story a little bit, I think there was a little closure there as well, because I'm sure a lot of years went by and they were just thinking about him and wish they can say something, but not being the right time. And they found the perfect time to talk about it, pay tribute to him, to do light years. And it was a really touching moment. So when it comes to closure, I think both of those moments fit in with that theme. Obviously, one that people are going to talk about forever, but the Scully moment, I think that the band is happy to have had done and well deserving of that. So there you have it. Those are our 6 themes for what defines the 2025 tour. Now, over the next couple of months, I think some of the episode content that we'll do will probably be performance-wise, talking about these 2025 shows and going back on some of these performances. And we'll kind of put some themes together for what songs we want to use for a different episode, and what, this would be the episode where we get the dedications. This would be the episode where these were the hard rockers of the tour, whatever. But we'll go back to this tour a lot this year, more often than we've gone back to a tour in the past. And that doesn't even have to do with running down a set list. It's just talking about moments and going back to some of the stuff that was impactful for this year. So there will be more episodes featuring the 2025 tour this year. So if that's something that you're interested in, then hang on to your hats. I think you guys are going to like content when it comes to later in the summer or even in the fall. So we'll keep those things locked in. And look, if you want us to go back to old tours and do similar things to old tours too, maybe that's another idea that we can go back to. So next week, we are going to cover a full set list. We are going to do the Global Citizens Festival from 2015 and put that on the books. So that one will be interesting. It is a Patreon request from our patron, Richard. So we'll go to that one during that time, and we'll see what happens the rest of the month. I think there's a little bit of an idea to do some 1995 discussions, and I think the plan, as of right now, is to do the Polo Field show and to do some extra coverage on the Polo Field show. So let's keep that in mind, and that's what we're going to build up to for the rest of the month. So, all right. If you like that, then hopefully you guys will like all the other stuff that we have in our archives. So make sure that you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you're subscribed to this podcast so you can go back into the archives and listen to some of the other content that we've covered over the years. It's been 7 long years, so there's no shortage of things to listen to. And hey, if you're there, make sure, help us out. Give us a 5-star rating, leave a comment, let us know, let the people know how we're doing, what you think of the show, and that goes a long way because going out on tour and telling people about the pod on tour is really important, but if they hear from you too, that's just as important. So we appreciate everybody going out there and leaving some comments if you choose to do so. All right. Anything else that needs to be said here?
I guess the last thing that I want to say is I know that we try to cover a lot, but it was a very special run, Randy. I guess my expectations were not very high about this because you want to see more. You're selfish, right? Like you're like, well,
Always.
maybe we're gonna get something in the fall, but you know what? Like, I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to be in that last night because I was very tired. I had like 2 hours of sleep. That's a different story. But I came back home with this sense of relief and closure that I was able to transmit something in the reaction episode, to talk to you, interact to you. I mean, of course, that I miss you and I want to see you again on a different show. And we will do that next time that we have another run. But I don't know. It was one of those things where like I came back home thinking this was a great run and I'm just so grateful for what I had and what I was able to experience and the people that I get to connect with. And it made me feel that I was not craving more for a while. I was at peace going back home. I don't know if that is a thing with a Pearl Jam touring history and how crazy we can get when it gets to that. But I don't know. It was a special for those things.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I don't know if I agree that I'm at peace, but it feels satisfying for the moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. And we'll be sitting here waiting, and whenever they decide they want to do something again, we'll gladly go where they tell us to go. And then that's where we congregate. And the next tour, I want everybody in this community to pick the same show, pick the same hotel. I want to make it a Live on Four Legs adventure. I want to throw parties. I want to make it feel like we're all there together. So keep it in mind. And hopefully, whenever that happens, whether it be next year or later down the line, we can all make something special happen. So,
hey, Randy, before we go too, if we do that, I know a drummer somewhere. So yeah, let's make it happen. We can have a lot of fun karaoke with a live band. How about that?
oh, I'm into it. I'm into it. Anything that'll keep you guys entertained. Let's do it.
Let's make it work. That'll be so much fun.
Yep. All right, guys. So this may be the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, miss you already, miss you always. Hey, it's only been 2 weeks, but it was good to get back to this. It was good to kind of tackle this story because I know a lot of people wanted to hear from us, and now we're back. And we'll be back next week for another show that we'll cover from Global Citizens Festival in 2015. So stay tuned for that. Until next week, see you on the pod.